In the autumn of 2021, a quiet transaction reshaped a familiar presence in millions of kitchens across the globe. Click of Philips NV announced it was selling its entire domestic appliance division to a Chinese private equity firm for 3.7 billion euros. Yet the most striking detail was a line item concerning a Shield logo. For 700 million euros over 15 years, the new entity received the right to keep stamping the sacred Philips name onto rice cookers and air fryers. The corporate creator had walked away from the kitchen. To anyone standing in a kitchen from Amsterdam to Hanoi, the appliance on the counter looked unchanged. But the engineering labs in Eindhoven no longer designed its heating circuits, and European factories no longer built its chassis. How did Europe's most famous consumer brand reach a point where its kitchen hardware was sold off? And what happens when the company behind the logo moves from the factory floor to a boardroom focused entirely on medical technology? Every week, we reconstruct the stories behind the appliances, factories, engineers, repair shops, and family routines that quietly shaped everyday life. Subscribe if those forgotten industrial memories still matter to you. To understand how Philips became a fixture of domestic life, we have to return to the final decade of the 19th century, long before the first electric rice cooker automated the evening meal. In May 1891, a banker named Frederick Philips and his 27-year-old son Gerard purchased an empty industrial building in Eindhoven, a modest market town in the southern Netherlands. Gerard was an engineer fascinated by electricity, glowing filaments, and the stubborn physics of incandescent light. The early years were punishingly difficult. The factory nearly went bankrupt. Orders were small, glass blowing was erratic, and competitors in Germany and the United States held ironclad grips on the market. Survival arrived not just through Gerard's technical persistence, but through the commercial genius of his younger brother, Anton Philips, who joined the firm in 1895. Anton understood that making a superior light bulb was only half the battle. The bulb had to find its way into municipal streets, railway stations, and household lamps across Europe. Under their combined leadership, Philips evolved from a struggling workshop into an industrial titan. Crucially, the Philips brothers instituted a paternalistic management model that treated their workers from the cradle to the grave. They built housing estates, schools, hospitals, and funded medical care for their expanding workforce in Eindhoven. The factory town became a self-sustaining ecosystem where generations of workers grew up assembling electrotechnical goods under the watchful eye of the founding family. As Europe electrified through the 1920s and 1930s, Philips expanded its catalog far beyond illumination. Vacuum tubes for radios, X-ray equipment, and small electric motors began rolling off assembly lines. The company learned a vital lesson during the disruptions of the First and Second World Wars. A manufacturing enterprise must be globally adaptable. When geopolitical borders fractured, Philips established regional branches, adapting its electrical engineering to fit the specific needs of foreign markets. Yet for decades, the company's heart remained anchored in electromechanical hardware, devices designed to withstand the physical demands of daily use. By the mid-20th century, as global standards of living rose, kitchens emerged as the ultimate frontier for industrial design. Households across Europe and Asia were transitioning away from coal stoves and open gas flames toward automated convenience. While Japanese electronics firms were busy inventing and perfecting the dedicated automatic rice cooker, European manufacturers like Philips approached the kitchen with a broader philosophy: the electrification of food preparation as a unified domestic system. The company had solved the problem of bringing reliable electrical current into the home. But as global trade corridors reopened after post-war reconstruction, European appliance makers faced a rising wave of specialized, hyper-efficient competitors from Asia, who viewed the kitchen not as a general workshop, but as a dedicated landscape of specialized culinary automation. The company had built an empire on light and electricity. Now it had to prove it could master the subtle physics of the dinner table. The turning point for Philips in the small domestic appliance sector did not happen overnight. It was forged through a deliberate pivot toward global lifestyle engineering. During the latter half of the 20th century, as consumer electronics margins began to tighten under intense international competition, Philips concentrated heavily on small domestic appliances, blenders, irons, deep fryers, and eventually advanced cooking appliances tailored to international culinary markets. The engineering philosophy behind these products was rooted in the company's Amsterdam and Eindhoven design centers. Unlike generic manufacturers who treated kitchen tools as simple plastic shells housing off-the-shelf heating coils, Philips approached appliance design as an exercise in industrial ergonomics and advanced material science. The breakthrough in cooking technology arrived when the company embraced sophisticated thermal control systems. For decades, standard rice cookers relied on a simple mechanical bimetallic thermostat that clicked off when water boiled away. But as urban demographics shifted and consumer demands evolved toward health-conscious cooking, particularly multigrain diets and precise texture control, the traditional mechanical switch was no longer enough. Philips responded by developing advanced microcomputer-controlled cooking systems, culminating in specialized lines like the Advanced Collection and the 5000 series. Consider the physical reality of a Philips multigrain induction rice cooker. Instead of merely heating a metal plate at the base of a thin aluminum bowl, the appliance utilized patented induction heating technology to wrap the entire cooking vessel in an electromagnetic field. The inner pot itself was engineered as a multi-layer composite, often featuring an enamel cast iron core designed to distribute thermal energy uniformly around every single grain of rice. What consumers physically noticed was a transformation in daily routine. The digital interface featured intuitive touch controls and specialized algorithms capable of adjusting heat levels across 5 distinct stages of the cooking cycle. A user could select settings for jasmine rice, brown rice, or mixed multigrain varieties without guessing at water ratios. Behind this sleek plastic and digital display lay a massive global manufacturing and distribution apparatus. Philips was no longer just a Dutch lighting company. It was a household fixture across Europe, Latin America, and Asia. Retailers from high-end department stores to local electronics shops reserved prime shelf space for the Philips Shield logo. Yet beneath this commercial success, a hidden structural vulnerability was taking root. Designing a sophisticated induction cooker in Eindhoven required heavy research and development investments. But as manufacturing shifted increasingly toward cost-competitive industrial parks in East Asia, keeping production aligned with European corporate overhead became an escalating financial puzzle. The engineers had built a magnificent cooking machine, but the business model supporting it was beginning to creak under the weight of global market realities. By the early 2000s, Philips consumer appliances enjoyed an era of undisputed global presence. Walk into an appliance retailer anywhere from a bustling shopping mall in Bangkok to a suburban home center in Western Europe, and the Philips display commanded attention. Catalog pages featured clean, Scandinavian-influenced industrial design, glossy white plastics, brushed stainless steel panels, and digital LED screens that promised effortless culinary perfection. This was the golden age of the brand's domestic division. Consumers trusted the name because decades of experience with Philips television sets, electric shavers, and audio gear had built a deep reservoir of reliability. When a newly married couple received a Philips rice cooker or kitchen machine as a wedding gift, it was viewed as an heirloom-grade purchase, an object designed to sit on the kitchen counter for a decade without faltering. Factory life during this peak era was a study in high-volume precision. Assembly lines hummed with automated pick-and-place robots inserting circuit boards, workers inspecting non-stick inner pot coatings for microscopic blemishes, and quality control technicians testing thermal fuses before final packaging. Every box contained a neatly folded multi-language instruction manual and a warranty card bearing the iconic Shield logo with its 4 stars and rising waves, a visual shorthand for electrical and optical innovation. Retailers loved the brand because it moved steadily. Service networks were robust. If a thermal fuse blew or a control board malfunctioned, local repair technicians could readily source replacement parts from official regional distribution hubs. The ecosystem of manufacturing, retail, warranty, and repair functioned as an unbroken circle of trust. Yet this moment represented the high water mark of a contradiction that had been building for years. Herein lay the midpoint stakes of the entire enterprise. If a brand like Philips, backed by a century of engineering heritage and global distribution, could not sustain the profitability of its domestic appliance division, what did that say about the future of European hardware manufacturing? The stakes were not merely about whether a consumer could buy a reliable rice cooker. The deeper question was whether European industrial conglomerates could survive an economic landscape dominated by hyperscaled Asian manufacturing ecosystems and software-driven profit margins. The kitchen counter was no longer just a place for cooking. It was a battleground of corporate strategy. And inside the executive suites in Amsterdam, Leadership was looking past the kitchen toward a far more lucrative horizon. The decline of Philips as a kitchen appliance manufacturer did not begin with a catastrophic factory explosion or a sudden bankruptcy. It began with a quiet, strategic retreat. The first small cracks appeared in the boardrooms of the late 1990s and early 2000s. As low-cost, high-efficiency manufacturing centers across China and South Korea expanded their industrial scale, profit margins on consumer electronics and small appliances began to compress globally. Retailers demanded lower wholesale prices, while consumers grew accustomed to replacing inexpensive appliances rather than paying for component-level repairs. For a massive conglomerate like Philips, the mathematics of manufacturing physical hardware in high-cost European facilities grew increasingly difficult to justify. While the consumer division still sold millions of rice cookers, air fryers, and blenders, the capital returns were dwarfed by a different sector entirely: healthcare technology. In hospitals worldwide, Philips was pioneering advanced medical imaging, patient monitoring systems, and diagnostic equipment. These B2B medical technologies offered higher profit margins, long-term institutional contracts, and a degree of insulation from volatile consumer retail markets. Gradually, management's attention shifted away from the kitchen counter. Research and development budgets for domestic appliances were reallocated toward medical engineering. To protect its bottom line, Philips began outsourcing more of its appliance manufacturing to third-party original equipment manufacturers, OEMs, and original design manufacturers, ODMs, across Asia. The physical objects on kitchen shelves began to change. While the design language remained polished, uncrafted by teams in Amsterdam and Eindhoven, the deep integration between the manufacturing floor and the corporate parent dissolved. The factories in Europe that once built appliances were repurposed, downsized, or closed entirely. Competitors from Asia, companies that owned massive, vertically integrated manufacturing supply chains, began out-innovating and underpricing legacy Western brands in key categories like rice, cookers, and multi-cookers. Retailers slowly reduced the shelf space allocated to Philips, shifting display prominence to brands that controlled their own low-cost, high-speed production lines. By the 2010s, the writing was on the corporate wall. Philips initiated a multi-year restructuring process to formally shed its remaining consumer lifestyle burdens. In 2013, the company officially dropped electronics from its legal name, rebranding entirely as a health technology company. The domestic appliance division became an awkward tenant inside a medical enterprise, a profitable, well-known business, but one fundamentally misaligned with the company's core identity of building MRI scanners and patient monitors. The final chapter of this industrial evolution arrived in August 2021. Philips announced it was divesting its entire domestic appliance arm to Hill House Investment, a private equity firm, for €3.7 billion. The division was cut loose into an independent corporate structure, later rebranded as Versuni. To maintain market recognition, the new entity agreed to pay hundreds of millions of euros for a 15-year license to use the Philips brand name on its boxes and user manuals. The factories were gone. The corporate parent was treating patients, not cooking rice. The brand name was now rented property. The corporate restructure was complete. The factories closed. The engineers moved on. The logo became a lease. Today, the legacy of Philips in the kitchen exists in a fascinating state of suspended animation. If you walk into an appliance store today, you will still find rice cookers bearing the familiar Shield logo. They are sleek, efficient, and technologically sophisticated, incorporating modern touch panels and multi-grain algorithms designed by Versuni's global teams. Millions of households continue to rely on them for daily meals. Yet beneath that familiar logo, the corporate reality has fundamentally transformed. The company that founded an industrial empire in a modest Eindhoven light bulb factory in 1891 no longer manufactures a single kitchen appliance. The medical technology giant in Amsterdam focuses on clinical diagnostics, while a private equity-backed consumer goods firm manages the kitchen portfolio under a rented trademark. The story of Philips and its journey away from the rice cooker is emblematic of a broader modern industrial truth. In the global economy, brands frequently outlive the companies that built them, and trademarks often detach completely from the factories that gave them physical weight. We live in a world where logos are licensed assets, manufacturing is outsourced to distant supply chains, and corporate parents chase the highest margins in high-tech specialized sectors. Yet in millions of homes, none of those corporate balance sheets matter when the evening meal is served. On a quiet kitchen counter, beneath the warm glow of a digital display, a multi-layer rice cooker finishes its cycle. Steam escapes in a faint, familiar hiss through the pressure valve. The digital timer blinks, and the Shield logo sits quietly on the plastic housing, a lingering monument to a time when a Dutch light bulb workshop dared to engineer the entire domestic world, one appliance at a time. See you in the next video.